Welcome to Lecture 8 of PS201 Seven-Step Problem Solving. This lecture covers Step 7, Communicate the recommendations. The synthesis is complete, the governing thought is sharp, and the argument is well supported. But none of that matters if the recommendation is not communicated in a way that drives a decision. Communication is not a delivery mechanism for analysis, it is itself a strategic act. How you structure the message, how you anticipate objections, and how you adapt in the room are all as important as the quality of the underlying work. Here is the course roadmap. This is the final substantive step, the point at which the 6 weeks of analytical work are translated into a decision or an action. Lecture 9 will put the entire framework together in a single integrated case, but today's lecture contains the skills that determine whether the framework produces real change. A recommendation that is not communicated effectively is a recommendation that is not acted on. That is the standard against which this lecture should be judged. The first reason structured communication matters is that it respects the audience's time. Decision-makers are busy. They have limited patience for lengthy preambles, extensive background sections, and detailed methodology explanations before they reach the point. A structured recommendation leads with the conclusion, what the team recommends and why, within the first 2 minutes of the presentation or the first page of the document. Structured communication signals that the presenter understands the audience's constraints and has made decisions about what to include and what to omit. The second reason is that structure signals confidence. An analyst who leads with the conclusion is demonstrating that they have reached a clear view and are prepared to defend it. An analyst who builds slowly through pages of context before arriving at a tentative recommendation is demonstrating uncertainty, whether they intend to or not. Decision-makers read structure as a proxy for conviction. A well-structured recommendation communicates not just what the analysis found but that the analyst believes it. The third reason is that structure reduces misinterpretation. An unstructured presentation forces each audience member to construct their own understanding of what the key message is, and different audience members will construct different understandings. One stakeholder leaves believing the recommendation is about cost reduction. Another believes it is about revenue growth. Both attended the same presentation. Structure, a clear governing thought, supported arguments, and explicit next steps ensures that every person in the room leaves with the same understanding of what was said and what is being asked of them. The fourth reason is that structure enables faster decisions. A decision-maker who has received a clearly structured recommendation with an explicit ask, "We recommend these 3 actions, and we need your approval on action 1 by Friday," can make a decision in the room. A decision-maker who has received an unstructured presentation of findings with no clear recommendation cannot make a decision until they have done their own synthesis. Every day of delay in a decision costs time and, in Northmart's case, continued margin deterioration. Structure accelerates the decision process. The pyramid principle, developed by Barbara Minto, is the foundational framework for structuring analytical communication. The principle is simple: state the conclusion first, then the arguments that support it, then the evidence that supports each argument. The structure moves from the most important to the least important, the opposite of the scientific report format, which builds through evidence and argument to a conclusion at the end. The pyramid principle is appropriate for recommendation communication because decision-makers want to know the answer before they evaluate the argument. The most common structural mistake in recommendation communication is starting with background, the project context, the methodology, the data sources, and the limitations, all before stating the recommendation. This format, sometimes called the BLUF failure, background, limitations, ultimately findings, makes the audience wait through everything they already know to reach the one thing they came to hear. Starting with the conclusion is not abrupt, it is respectful. The audience knows the background. They hired you to produce the recommendation. Lead with it. A well-structured recommendation deck has 5 sections, and every section serves exactly one function. The executive summary states the governing thought, the 3 supporting arguments, and the recommended next steps, all on one page. The situation and complication section establishes why the problem exists and why it matters. The key findings section presents the evidence that supports the recommendation. The recommendation section specifies the proposed actions with owners, timelines, and expected outcomes. And the next step section states exactly what decision or action is being requested from the audience today. The executive summary must fit on a single page, no exceptions. If it requires 2 pages, it is not an executive summary, it is an introduction. The discipline of the single page forces the writer to make prioritization decisions. Which 3 findings are most important? What is the single most important next step? Which context is essential and which can be omitted? These decisions are analytical, not editorial. A single-page executive summary that has been carefully written is a complete argument. A 2-page summary that has not been edited is a list of things the team was reluctant to cut. The structure of the executive summary follows the pyramid, governing thought at the top, 3 supporting arguments beneath it, and the recommended next steps at the bottom. Each supporting argument is a 1-sentence claim, not a description of the analysis, but a statement of the finding and its implication. For Northmart, the 3 arguments might be: labor cost growth is outpacing revenue growth by 6 percentage points annually, shift scheduling is not aligned to trading demand at 3 stores, and 2 supplier contracts are significantly above market rates. Each argument is a claim that directly supports the governing thought. The language of the executive summary must be direct, specific, and free of qualifications that weaken the recommendation. Avoid phrases such as "it appears that," or "the data suggests," or "we believe that." These signal uncertainty and invite challenge. Use declarative statements: Northmart's labor cost is 24% of revenue, against a peer median of 19%. That is a fact, stated plainly. If you genuinely have uncertainty, acknowledge it in 1 sentence and explain what would resolve it. Do not hedge every statement as a way of managing your own discomfort with a strong recommendation. Before the executive summary is circulated, it must be reviewed and signed off by the project lead, not just copy-edited for grammar, but reviewed for accuracy, for alignment with the full deck, and for the precision of the recommendation. Every claim in the executive summary must be traceable to a specific piece of analysis in the supporting deck. If a claim cannot be traced, it must be either removed or investigated. The sign-off is the quality gate. It is not a formality, it is the moment at which the team takes collective responsibility for the argument they are about to make. Before walking into any recommendation meeting, list every objection you expect the audience to raise. For Northmart, likely objections include: labor costs are high because of minimum wage legislation, not scheduling inefficiency. We tried to renegotiate supplier contracts last year and it did not work. A 16% margin target is unrealistic given our cost base. Write these down explicitly. For each objection, prepare a factual response that either addresses the concern directly or acknowledges its validity and explains how the recommendation accounts for it. There are 2 types of objection, and they require different responses. A data objection challenges the accuracy of a finding: your labor cost figure is wrong, it includes temporary agency staff that we are already reducing. This objection must be addressed with evidence. If the objection is valid, correct the finding. A preference objection challenges the recommendation without disputing the data: I understand the analysis, but I do not want to restructure the workforce. This objection requires a different kind of response, one that acknowledges the concern but presses for a decision. For each data objection on your list, prepare the specific evidence that responds to it before the meeting. If the challenge is that the labor cost figure includes temporary staff, prepare a version of the analysis that separates permanent and temporary labor and shows that the conclusion holds in both cases. Having the evidence prepared in advance sends a signal: the team has thought carefully about the recommendation and is not presenting it defensively. It also shortens the meeting: a challenge that can be answered in 30 seconds with prepared evidence does not derail the discussion. Before the meeting, define the decision boundary. What is the minimum outcome from this meeting that constitutes success? Is it approval of all 3 recommended actions? Approval of one action with the others deferred? Commitment to a follow-up meeting with a specific outcome? Defining the decision boundary in advance allows the presenter to navigate pushback strategically, to concede on lower priority points in exchange for commitment on the critical ones. A meeting that ends with no decision is not a partial success. It is a failure of preparation. When delivering the recommendation verbally, open with the insight: not with a welcome or a summary of the agenda or an acknowledgement of how long the project has taken. Our analysis shows that Northmart can restore its margin to 16% within 12 months by addressing labor deployment and 2 supplier contracts. I will walk you through the evidence and the specific actions we recommend. That is the opening. It states the conclusion, signals the structure, and respects the audience's time. Everything else follows from it. The most common verbal delivery failure is the data dump, taking the audience through every analysis in sequence, presenting every data point, and explaining every methodological choice before arriving at the recommendation. This approach exhausts the audience's attention before reaching the most important part of the presentation. The verbal delivery should follow the pyramid, lead with the conclusion, present the 3 supporting arguments with their key evidence, and then offer to go deeper on any argument that the audience wants to examine. Put the data in the appendix, not the main deck. After stating the governing thought and the key recommendation, pause. Do not rush immediately to the supporting arguments. Give the audience a moment to react. Their initial reaction, surprise, skepticism, agreement, or silence, is the most important real-time signal you will receive about whether the recommendation is landing. If the CEO looks skeptical when you name the labor cost finding, that is the moment to engage with the skepticism, not to press forward to the next slide. Reading the room is a presentation skill, but it begins with pausing long enough to see the room. If the audience's reaction, verbal or non-verbal, signals that a key assumption is being challenged, adapt in real time. This does not mean abandoning the recommendation. It means choosing which argument to emphasize next based on what the room is telling you. If the CFO challenges the benchmark figure, go deeper on the benchmarking methodology. If the COO is nodding vigorously at the scheduling finding, reinforce it before moving on. Adapting in real time is not improvisation, it is the execution of a plan that was prepared in advance, including the anticipated objections and the evidence to address them. Communication norms vary significantly across cultures, and a recommendation structure that works in one context may be inappropriate in another. In low-context cultures, the UK, Germany, the United States, direct communication is expected and valued. Leading with the conclusion is seen as professional and efficient. In high-context cultures, Japan, China, many parts of the Middle East, the relational and contextual framing of a recommendation is as important as its content. Jumping to a conclusion without establishing shared context may be perceived as arrogant or insufficiently respectful of hierarchy. Know your audience before choosing your structure. Within any culture, audiences also differ by seniority and technical background. A board-level audience wants the governing thought, the key implications, and the specific decision being requested. They do not want to review the regression outputs. A technical team reviewing your methodology wants exactly the opposite. They will challenge the conclusion if they are not satisfied with the analytical rigor that supports it. Build the presentation for the primary decision-making audience, and prepare supporting material, appendices, technical notes, detailed data tables, for the technical audience. Serve both audiences, but do not structure the main deck around the needs of the secondary one. The first takeaway: structure your communication using the pyramid principle, conclusion first, supporting argument second, evidence third. A well-structured recommendation respects the audience's time, signals analytical confidence, reduces misinterpretation, and enables faster decisions. The structure of the message is not separate from its content, it is part of the argument. An unstructured recommendation is not just harder to follow, it is less persuasive, because it appears less certain. The second takeaway: list every likely objection before the meeting and prepare a response to each. Distinguish data objections from preference objections, they require different kinds of responses. Have the evidence prepared so that data challenges can be addressed in 30 seconds. Define the decision boundary before entering the room, and be prepared to trade concessions on lower priority points for commitment on the critical ones. Preparedness is not just a confidence strategy, it is an analytical discipline. The third takeaway: adapt the structure, language, and depth of your communication to your specific audience. Board-level audiences need the governing thought and the decision ask. Technical audiences need the analytical rigor. High-context cultures need relational framing. Know who is in the room before you enter it, and build the presentation accordingly. Communication that is tailored to the audience is not pandering, it is professional competence. Here is the first discussion question. Write a one-page executive summary for the Northmart recommendation. It must contain a governing thought, 3 supporting arguments, each stated as a declarative sentence, and a specific next steps ask. It must fit on one page. Time yourself. If it takes more than 45 minutes, the governing thought is not clean enough and you should revise it before writing the summary. Share your summary with a partner and check whether it passes the 3 synthesis tests from Lecture 7. The second question. You are about to present the Northmart recommendation to a board that includes the CEO, the CFO, and 3 non-executive directors. List 5 objections you expect to hear. For each one, classify it as a data objection or a preference objection. For the 2 data objections, specify the exact evidence you would use to address it. For one of the preference objections, write out the response you would give verbatim. The final question for this lecture. Consider a situation in which you have prepared a recommendation for a hierarchical, high-context audience, perhaps a board in Japan or a senior government ministry in a relationship-driven culture. How would you adapt the structure of the Northmart recommendation? What would you change about the opening, the sequence of arguments, and the way you handle disagreement in the room? Be specific about the adaptations and why each one is warranted.